You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter @RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hey! Sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, except no imitation. I've got to start with the Warriors destroying the Nets. Firstly, let me just say that first half may have been the best first half I've seen in an incredibly long time. I mean, both teams were running. They couldn't miss. You had Curry pulling up from deep and hitting 30-footers like it's easy. I understand that he does that every game, but it's still incredible to me. You had Durant doing Durant things, Harden doing Harden things, Bruce Brown was getting involved, Patty Mills was doing his thing, Blake Griffin was doing his thing, Andrew Wiggins was cooking, Jordan Poole was cooking, Jonathan Kuminga was exciting. It was an incredible first half. It was exhausting just to watch. I mean, at the half, the Warriors were up 5, but I don't think anyone in the building felt that the Nets couldn't come back. The thing is, though, once that third quarter hit, and the Nets looked absolutely dead to the world, they couldn't get stops, Durant went cold. He went 0 for 8 in the third quarter. That's tied for his most misses without hitting a shot in any quarter that he's ever played in the regular season and the playoffs. The other time he did that was in 2011. And look, if Durant goes cold, all due respect to James Harden, but Durant is such a big part of what the Nets do that if he goes cold, the Nets have no chance. It was stunning to see them get blown out the way that they did. They ended up losing by 18, even though they were down by only 5 at the half. They were up by 3 after the first quarter. To see them fall apart in the third quarter was stunning. It was upsetting. It was disappointing. I mean, it's tough to disagree with what Steve Nash said after the game. That the Nets aren't an elite team. It's tough to disagree with that. They're a good team. They're a very good team. They're third in the East. They're 10-5. They're not a bad team by any stretch. But in order to be the best, you've got to beat the best. And you take a look at the last 11 games that the Nets have played. They're 8-3. But look at the teams that they've beaten. The Pacers, the Pistons, the Hawks, the Pistons again, the Raptors, the Magic, the Pelicans, and the Thunder. There are no good teams in that group. At least at this very moment, they're not good. Can a team like the Pacers or the Hawks turn it around? Absolutely, but at this very moment, they're not good, okay? It's just that simple. Meanwhile, you look at the 3 losses that they have. They got destroyed by the Heat. They got creamed by the Bulls. And they got eviscerated by the Warriors. Those are 3 of the best teams in the NBA right now. What's the saying? To be the man, you've got to beat the man? Well, to be considered one of the best teams in the NBA, you've got to beat the best teams in the NBA. The Nets haven't done that recently. They're not an elite team. They're a very good team. They're going to make the playoffs. And once they get there, the chips will fall where they may. But it is upsetting to see this team that had championship aspirations underachieve. I mean, here's what's really upsetting. There is a golden opportunity here for the Nets to be by far and away the best team in the NBA. The Sixers are in turmoil. If the season ends today, the Bucks are out of the playoffs. Same thing with the Hawks. The Lakers have underachieved. You're looking for a team to rise to the top. That team should be the Nets. Instead, it's a team like the Golden State Warriors. How do you look at the Warriors and say that at this very moment, they're not the title favorites? You've got Steph Curry doing Steph Curry things. Andrew Wiggins finally seems to be putting it all together. Jordan Poole is having a really good season. Damian Lee off the bench has been really good. Andre Iguodala's doing his thing. Jonathan Kuminga's brought a really good energy. Draymond Green is doing Draymond Green things. And they're going to get Klay Thompson and James Wiseman back soon. At this very moment, and a lot can change, but at this very moment, the Golden State Warriors are title favorites. You destroy the Nets by 18 points on national television at the Clays. You're 1.5 games better than any other team in the NBA. You're the title favorites. So what's the outlook for the Nets? Is it all doom and gloom? The answer is no. You can call me naive, but I truly believe that Kyrie Irving will come back. I don't think he's going to get vaccinated. But I do think the New York City mandate will change. I mean, one thing you can see from watching these games is that the Nets are missing an extra shot creator. They're missing another offensive threat. How do the Nets score? Durant will do Durant things. Harden will do Harden things. Maybe Harden will drive and kick it out to an open shooter like Joe Harris or Patty Mills. LaMarcus Aldridge will hit some mid-range shots. It was really surprising to only see Aldridge play 9 minutes. There was no good reason for that. This guy's playing 20 minutes a game for the Nets. Instead, in a nationally televised game with no Joe Harris, no Paul Millsap, no Nick Claxton, and no Kyrie Irving, LaMarcus Aldridge, one of the Nets' best players, only played 9 minutes. Bizarre. Very bizarre. I mean, Bruce Brown can hit some floaters, or he can sneak in and get some rebounds to go. But the Nets are kind of limited offensively. Who are 3 of their main rotational guys? Blake Griffin, DeAndre Bembry, and Javon Carter. Those guys can't put the ball in the freaking ocean. I like Blake Griffin. I like what he brings to the team. Blue collar boy, takes charges, hits the deck on every loose ball, and a better defender than people give him credit for. But for goodness sake, you're starting every game. You're averaging 22.5 minutes per game. Can you score more than 6 points a game? Can you shoot better than 31% from the field? Can you hit a freaking three-pointer, please? Does Javon Carter really need to get all those minutes? What a disappointment he's been. I thought he'd actually do a solid job as the backup point guard. Oh my God, he can't put the ball in the ocean. Solid defensively, but for Pete's sake. Less than 3 points a game? 26.5% from the field? Less than 30% from beyond the arc? I don't care how great you are defensively. That's not going to get the job done. And DeAndre Bembry, I like. Alright, good player. Very good defensively, and he's actually shooting the ball efficiently. The thing is, though, he's playing 16 minutes per game, and he's averaging less than 5 points per game. I mean, that's not going to get the job done. You want to stop relying on Durant so much? Here's a crazy idea. Don't play DeAndre Bembry for 30 minutes. Take Javon Carter's minutes away. Play Aldridge more than Griffin. I'll be honest with you. I want to see Cam Thomas a little bit more. I understand that he did not play well yesterday. Okay? 2 for 9 from the field. 0 for 5 from beyond the arc. Bad game. But this guy was a first rounder. 27th overall pick. What was the one thing he did really well at LSU? He scored. He can make his own shot. He put up 23 points at LSU. Give him a chance. Maybe give a guy like Day'Ron Sharpe a chance. Another first rounder, a guy who the Nets really liked coming out of UNC. I'm not sure exactly how you'd use him, but what would you rather see? Blake Griffin get 20 minutes per game? DeAndre Bembry get 30 minutes a game? And Javon Carter get 15 minutes a game? Or would you rather see Day'Ron Sharpe get a little run? I mean, at the end of the day, the Nets are limited with what they can do without Kyrie. Alright, I think one thing we've learned from the first month of the season is that the Brooklyn Nets really need Kyrie Irving if they're gonna win a championship. You look at this roster, you look how it was constructed. It was made for a guy like Kyrie. I mean, the rotations were put together with a guy like Kyrie in mind. The Nets not having him is terrible. And sadly, nothing's going to change until January. At the absolute earliest. Because that's when Eric Adams can change the New York City mandate. But even then, that's not going to be the first thing he does. And even if he does change the mandate, Kyrie's not coming back overnight. You know he's going to go through a ramp-up period. God only knows how long that'll be. It's tough. It's really, really tough. You see these games, and you know that Durant and Harden are going to go off. But the Nets really need that third guy that they know is going to go off every single night. It can't be Joe Harris one night, LaMarcus Aldridge the next night, Patty Mills the next night. That's just not how this team is put together. The Nets are limited with what they can do without Kyrie. Steve Nash is right. They're not an elite team. They're not a title contender right now. Can they get there if the unthinkable happens? If Kyrie really doesn't play at all this year, if the mandate doesn't change? It's possible. I don't want to say there's a 0% chance of it, but I don't think it's highly likely. Durant can't do it all by himself. Harden's gotten frustrated by the new foul rules. And look, if your next best players are catch and shooters, you're limited. I'm not going to go as far as to say what Stephen A. Smith said. He's a troll. He just wants attention. There are very few people on this earth that I hate more than Stephen A. Smith. Never met the man. Maybe a nice guy. I don't know. I've never met him. But just the way he presents himself, he's a troll. I don't like people like that. I vehemently disagree with what he said, and I'm not going to repeat what he said. But the Nets should be concerned, because they're not an elite team. They're not a title contender, and when you have Kevin Durant and James Harden together, yes, without Kyrie Irving, but those guys are two of the best players in the NBA. When you have those guys together, you should be better than this. You should be able to beat great teams. You should be able to put up a fight in the second half of a nationally televised game. The one good thing is that the Nets tonight are playing the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers are really good, but they're banged up right now. No Jared Allen, no Larry Markkinen, no Colin Sexton, and no Evan Mobley. Also, Durant only played 32 minutes, and Harden only played 31 minutes. Now, granted, that's still a lot of minutes, but they weren't run ragged yesterday. They should be ready to go. You know they're going to be ticked off. I really want them to blow out the Cavaliers here. Realistically, they should win by 20. Alright, now I'll give you some NFL Valk talk. Specifically on an incredibly surprising announcement from Robert Saleh. We all thought that Zach Wilson would be ready to go for Sunday's game against the Dolphins. he's still out. So, okay, that means you're going to see Mike White, right? No. Joe Flacco is going to get the start. Because the Dolphins blitz a lot, and they throw a lot of different coverages out there, Joe Flacco's experience will give the Jets a better chance of winning. In other words, because the Dolphins have a great defense, we are going to start Joe Flacco over the folk hero, Mike White. There are two things that you need to dissect here. First, Zach Wilson not playing. We all operated under the assumption that Wilson would be 100% ready to go on Sunday. I think we can all agree that it makes no sense to play Wilson until he's 100%. It makes no sense to rush him back in the middle of a lost season. That's when minor injuries can become major injuries that can drastically alter careers. It's disappointing to know that Wilson won't be ready to go on Sunday, but if he's truly not 100%, okay. I can't begrudge the Jets for not playing him. The second thing, Flacco over White, that makes zero sense. And Salah's reasoning is beyond insane. The Dolphins have a good defense. They throw exotic looks at you, so White won't be able to handle it? Yeah, the 2021 Miami Dolphins and the 1985 Chicago Bears are going to be mentioned in the same breath 50 years from now. Let me throw some stats at you. The Dolphins defense has given up just over 400 yards per game. That's the 29th best mark in the NFL. They have given up just under 274 passing yards per game. That's the 28th best mark in the NFL. Rushing yards, they're middle of the pack. 109.3 per game, 15th in the league. That has nothing to do with the quarterback. I'm just throwing it out there for totality's sake. Points allowed per game, 25.2. That's the 24th best mark in the nation. Third down percentage. The Dolphins have given up first downs on 45.3% of the third downs that they have faced. That is the 29th best mark in the NFL. Only one player, Emmanuel Ogbah, has more than 3 sacks. Ogbah has 5. He's having a good year. The Miami Dolphins do not have a good defense. Even Dolphins fans will tell you that they don't have a good defense. Do they call exotic plays? Yeah, sure. But that's a reason to start Flacco over White? So let me get this straight. If Zach Wilson was 100%, would you still start Flacco? Same logic, right? Flacco has more experience than Wilson, so you want him to face the exotic defense, right? Boy, I'll tell you, the Jets better win on Sunday. If they don't, oh my gosh. Douglas and Salah are going to get criticized like they've never been criticized before. Douglas is going to be criticized for trading for Flacco. Sal is going to be criticized for starting Flacco. For their sakes, I hope the Jets win. I mean, I hope the Jets win anyway, but for their sakes, especially so. Here's the thing that's confusing to me. There's no universe where the Buffalo Bills have a worse defense than the Miami Dolphins. White started that game. I mean, you let him play a lot of that game, even when it was clear that he just didn't have it that day. And that's probably the nicest way I can say it. I mean, if your theory is that Mike White can't handle advanced defenses, why did you keep him in for so long against the Bills? And why is he still on the roster? Here's a newsflash for you. Every defense is gonna look to confuse your quarterback in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's disguising blitzes, throwing different formations at you, dropping guys back in coverage that you wouldn't think would drop back in coverage. Every defense is going to look to confuse you. That's literally part of the job of the defense. You can't just run a base defense every play. No team does that, and if they did, they'd lose by 50 every week. You know why? Because these NFL quarterbacks would recognize it, they'd dissect it, and they'd exploit it. I mean, the Dolphins do get to the quarterback a lot. They do get a lot of pressures. There's no question about that. But the babying of a quarterback that just 3 weeks ago you were hyping up and you looked at as a legitimate choice to start going forward isn't gonna work. So let me ask you something. Who do you think the real Mike White is? Is it the Mike White that we saw against the Bengals? Or is it the Mike White that we saw against the Bills? Even if it's the midpoint of those two Mike Whites, that's still no good reason to bench him. Like, if you wanted to say that White threw 4 interceptions and he looked inept, so we're going to go with the guy that we traded for, a former Super Bowl MVP, someone who we're very comfortable with, okay, I could understand that. I don't think anyone would have much of a problem with that. Even if you wanted to throw out the argument that Wilson had a game where he threw 4 interceptions and he didn't get benched. It's different. Zach Wilson's the future of the Jets. Mike White isn't. But this just reeks of dishonesty. You know what this reeks like? We want to do everything in our power to make sure that when Zach Wilson comes back, every Jets fan on earth is behind him. There is no Jets fan alive that is clamoring for Mike White, that's clamoring for Joe Flacco, that's clamoring for Josh Johnson, or that's clamoring for Joe Namath. We want to do everything in our power to make sure that all of Jets Nation is behind him. And that makes sense. I can't begrudge that. And I understand that you really can't say that. That's not going to play well in the media. So you've got to come up with another reason. The thing is, though, you came up with the stupidest reason possible. Because the Dolphins throw exotic looks at the quarterback, we're going to go with Joe Flacco over Mike White? See, here's the thing. If your logic was what I just said, that you want to make sure that all of Jets Nation is behind Wilson, you really can't have it both ways. You can't say, we want to make sure that everyone's behind Wilson, and then start a quarterback that no one wants to see. There is no Jets fan alive that wants to see Joe Flacco over Mike White. I'd rather see White. I know that he just threw 4 interceptions. He did it against the freaking Buffalo Bills. That's a great defense, not the Dolphins' defense. Even if you wanted to have White on a short leash, I could have accepted that. But saying that the Dolphins have this defense that's impossible for a young quarterback to beat? For a quarterback that doesn't have a lot of starts to his name to win against? That's just a bold-faced lie. And I have a huge problem with that. I understand that as a sports fan, I'm gonna be lied to. But the lies need to be believable. Like, here's the thing. Week 1. The Dolphins played the Patriots. The Dolphins won that game. But Mac Jones played really well. He completed 29 of his 39 passes for 281 yards and a touchdown. He was only sacked once. He's a young quarterback. He's younger than White. A month ago, Trevor Lawrence beat the Dolphins. Lawrence completed 25 of his 41 passes for 319 yards and a touchdown. He was only sacked twice. The Dolphins don't have a good defense. They don't have a defense that's impossible for young quarterbacks to play against. I have never heard that logic before. Again, if Wilson was 100%, would he have gotten this start? Again, for Douglas's and Salah's sakes, I really, really hope Flacco balls out. If he doesn't, they are going to get killed on Monday. And I'm not even going to wait until Monday to do it. There was such a better way to do this. If you really didn't want White to start, all you had to do was say, after that performance against the Bills, we couldn't start him. Flacco looked good at the end of the game, threw a touchdown pass. He earned the right to start. There. Done. And if someone asked you what this means for Mike White's future, all you have to do is say this. Look, I still like Mike. I think he does have a good future in this league. I think he showed what he can do against the Bengals and Colts. But at this point in time, we feel that starting Joe gives us the best chance to win. There. Done. See, the logic that Flacco should start over White isn't wrong in and of itself. It's just the way that you defended it is so obviously a lie that I have a problem with that. And if that's truly what you believe, that's just stupid. Yeah, we're going to put Flacco out there against the Dolphins. We're or we're going to put White out there against the Bills. Why? Because the Dolphins' defense is more complicated than the Bills' defense. Because the Dolphins' defense is harder to dissect than the Bills' defense. Oh my God. If anyone truly believes that, they should not be a head coach in the NFL. I have defended Saleh a lot. Never once have I called for his head. But this is really inexcusable. If Flacco doesn't ball out and the Jets don't win, Douglas and Saleh are going to get killed on Monday. Douglas for trading for him, and Saleh for starting him. It's just that simple. Can this work? The answer is yes. The Jets do have a chance to win this game. It's just hard to believe what the Jets are selling right now. This has the makings of being an abject disaster. Will it be an abject disaster? Maybe not. If Flacco balls out and the Jets win, all is forgiven. But if the Jets implode, here's a friendly piece of advice to Douglas and Saleh. Don't listen to any sports talk shows for a while. You're not going to like what you hear. Alright, now I'll give you some college football Valk talk. The latest CFP rankings dropped last night. The top 7 remains intact. Basically, all you need to know is that Oklahoma dropped to 13. Ole Miss moved up to 12. Wake Forest is back in the top 10. Notre Dame is 8, and Oklahoma State is 9. The top 4 is still Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, and OSU, with Cincinnati and Michigan on the outside looking in. I mean, you've got to realize something. We're getting pretty close to put up or shut up time. There are only 2 more weeks of college football left until we get to the conference championships, and then it's bowl season. So if you're a team like Michigan State and you're on the outside looking in, you need to beat OSU. Okay? It's just that simple. If you want to have a prayer of making the CFP, you've got to go into the horseshoe and beat the Buckeyes. Obviously, easier said than done, but that's the way it is. And if you're Michigan, you've got to slay Goliath. You've got to do something that you haven't done in the Jim Harbaugh era. Beat OSU. That game's going to be in Ann Arbor. I mean, make no mistake about it. OSU has the toughest path towards staying in the CFP picture. They beat Purdue, which was a good first step. In fact, they destroyed Purdue. That game was over in the first half. Now they've got to beat Michigan State. Granted, in the horseshoe, but still, MSU's a good team. And they've got to go to Ann Arbor and beat Michigan in front of 90,000 screaming Wolverines fans. Let me ask you something. Let's say MSU beats OSU. And let's say OSU beats Michigan. And let's look at it the other way. OSU beats MSU. but Michigan beats OSU. OSU isn't losing both these games. They can win both games, that wouldn't stun me, but they're not going to lose both. Would a team like MSU leapfrog Michigan and Cincinnati? Would Michigan leapfrog Cincinnati? You gotta think they'd leapfrog OSU. You can't leave MSU or Michigan out if they beat OSU. You want to tell me Cincinnati moves in their place? I don't hate that. I just don't see the committee doing that. I'll give you one other alternative. And this is what I'm looking forward to. The SEC title game. Georgia versus Alabama. Would Alabama get in even if they had 2 losses? I hope not. I wouldn't put it past the committee to do it, but I don't think they would do it. I think you'd be really hard-pressed to leave an undefeated Cincinnati team out over a 2-loss Alabama team. So look, if Georgia beats Alabama, that means that we probably have Georgia, Oregon, OSU, Cincy. If I'm adding a Michigan win over OSU, we have Georgia, Oregon, Michigan, Cincy. An MSU win, same thing. Georgia, Oregon, Michigan State, Cincy. The committee may not be crazy about it, but how do you have a 2-loss team over an undefeated Cincy team? I just don't see that happening. You want to tell me UCF in 17-18? Little different. Entering the CFP, the 4 teams that were in there all had 1 loss. Clemson lost to Syracuse. Alabama lost to Auburn in the Iron Bowl. Oklahoma lost to Iowa State. And Georgia lost to Auburn. Yeah, that's right. Auburn beat 2 of the CFP teams. I mean, if you'll recall, that year, Auburn had a chance to sneak into the CFP. They were in the SEC title game going up against Georgia. Georgia destroyed them 28-7. That resulted in them having 3 losses. So there was no way that Auburn would get in. If Auburn had won that game, maybe, just maybe, Auburn sneaks into the CFP over Alabama. Maybe UCF would have a better chance of getting in. We'll never know for sure what would have happened. The point is, all 4 of the CFP teams that year, Clemson, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Georgia, all had 1 loss. There were no 2-loss teams. Clemson, Oklahoma, and Georgia got their 2nd losses in the CFP. I just can't see a 2-loss Alabama or a 2-loss OSU team getting into the CFP. Will an undefeated Cincinnati team not get in over a 1-loss Georgia? Yeah, Georgia's getting in over Cincinnati in that case. But a 2-loss team, I don't see it. I mean, nothing would make me happier than to see Cincinnati get in over Alabama. It's nothing against Alabama. I don't hate Alabama. I just want to see an undefeated Cincinnati team get rewarded for going undefeated. And I'd like to see UTSA get honored the same way. It's just not going to happen. Cincinnati has a better case because they play in the AAC versus Conference USA. The committee doesn't like the AAC that much, but they really don't like Conference USA. The only way that Cincinnati gets in, which is what I really want to see, is if Alabama and or Oregon lose. I mean, Oregon's going to have their hands full with Utah on Saturday in Salt Lake City. That's going to be a tough game. Utah's actually favored. But I think I'm going to pick Oregon in that game. And the Civil War against Oregon State, it's certainly possible that the Beavers could pull out the win. But I think I'll go with Oregon. And then in the Pac-12 title game, who's Oregon going to face? Would it be Utah again? Or would it be ASU? ASU's not a bad team this year. It's not impossible that Oregon can lose, but I think it's easier to picture Alabama losing to Georgia in the SEC title game. Alabama's going to destroy Arkansas, and they're going to destroy Auburn. Against Georgia? That's tough. That's really, really tough. I like the idea of Georgia, Oregon, OSU, Cincy. I don't even hate Georgia, Oregon, and either Michigan or Michigan State. And then Cincinnati as the 4 seed. I'd be fine with that. I just want to see Cincinnati in there. What more do the Bearcats need to do? There are a lot of interesting variables between now and the final CFP announcement. It's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. I do want to talk about a notable death in the sports world. That, of course, is the death of Bobby Collins, who died on Monday. His death was announced yesterday at the age of 88. It's okay if you don't know the name Bobby Collins. You're not going to see him in the College Football Hall of Fame ever. But he actually is a very important figure in college football history. He was the head coach of SMU when they got the death penalty. Now, the sad part is Collins was a really, really good head coach. I mean, he did good things with Southern Mississippi. In his 7 years there, they went 48-30-2. They made the Independence Bowl in 1980, beating McNeese State. Once upon a time, McNeese State actually had a good football team. Then they went to the Tangerine Bowl the year after. They went 9-2-1. And they lost a close game to Missouri 1917. The Tangerine Bowl obviously would later become known as the Citrus Bowl. Then after that, Collins left for SMU. Now, when Collins got to SMU, there was already, what's the nicest way to say this? Infractions taking place. Ron Meyer was paying recruits, and this did continue under Collins. Now, the question was, did Collins know about the payments? Here's what happened. He knew that players were being paid. He didn't know who they were. He didn't really do anything to stop it. I mean, at the end of the day, SMU was a good team. Like, from 82 to 84, SMU had double-digit wins every year. They won the Cotton Bowl in 82, the Aloha Bowl in 84. They had fallen off in 85 and 86, but that's when there were punishments handed down by the NCAA. The first part of the SMU scandal resulted in the Mustangs not being allowed to grant any new football scholarships for the 85 season. In 86, only 15 were made available. They weren't put on live TV in 1986. They had a 2-year postseason ban. Those were terrible teams. Then, after the 86 season, that's when the NCAA handed down the death penalty. There was a slush fund provided by a booster that paid players, whether it was jewelry, apartments. It was terrible. Now, it was bad enough that SMU had been caught once, but the fact that they were caught twice really made it so the NCAA had no choice. They had to hand down the death penalty. Their 87 season was canceled. Their home games in 88 were canceled. But by the time the 88 season rolled around, Forrest Gregg had taken over as head coach, and it was clear to him and everyone else that there was no way SMU could put a team together. They couldn't do off-campus recruiting. I mean, it was a joke. That 88 SMU team, if it had happened, would have lost to Pop Warner teams. So while the punishment by the NCAA was only for the 87 season, the 88 season was also canceled because of the death penalty. And realistically, SMU didn't recover until June Jones took over. And Jones took over in 2008. Even then, his first year, he went 1-11. It was really 2009 that SMU took a step in the right direction. They went 8-5. They won the Hawaii Bowl. I mean, think about the coaches after Bobby Collins. Forrest Gregg never made a bowl game. Tom Rossley never made a bowl game. Mike Cavan never made a bowl game. And Phil Bennett never made a bowl game. The best team that SMU had between Collins and Jones was Mike Cavan's first year in 1997. They went 6-5. The next best year was in 06 under Phil Bennett. They went 6-6. The death penalty and the punishments instituted by the NCAA really killed SMU football for over 20 years. I'm not saying that they were wrong to do it. They weren't. All right, what SMU was doing was terrible, and I highly advise you to watch the 30 for 30 on it, Pony Excess. It's very well done. It tells the story better than I ever could. It's a shame that Collins's legacy was tarnished because of this, since he really had nothing to do with instituting the slush fund. Did he do anything to stop it? The answer is no. But this really wasn't his doing. There were other powers at play here. I mean, at the end of the day, Bill Clements, the chairman of the Board of Governors at SMU, and a former governor of Texas, did nothing to stop the slush fund. They found out about it, but they kept it going because they wanted to honor their previous commitments. So if you have the chairman of the board okaying this, it's kind of tough to put a stop to it. I mean, Bobby Collins isn't a saint, but he was a good football coach. Is he the big bad wolf in the SMU scandal? No, but he is a figure in it. He has a very complicated legacy. Like I said, watch Pony Excess. May Bobby Collins rest in peace. Until tomorrow, I'm Jacob Valk, and always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.